Okay. Um, I think we have officially determined that we are done talking about denominations and we're going to move on to religions. So I needed to pick a religion today, um, and what I'd like to do. Well, all right. Just my brain's going 12 different directions. Um, so religions is different than denominations. When we talk about denominations, we're talking about Christian denominations. So some people will come to me sometimes and they'll say, my brother is a different religion, they're a Baptist. No, no, that's not a different religion, that's a different denomination, okay? Today we're going to start talking about different religions, non-Christian religions. And as I really did some significant research on this over the last few days in preparation for this. Worldwide, Christianity is overwhelmingly the number one religion in the world as of 2024, with about 31%. Islam, however, is not that far behind, but with 25%. And I'm assuming these are percent who, well, no, let me just continue. Irreligion actually is number three, so people who basically don't believe in anything is at 16%. Hinduism is at 15%, and Buddhism is at 7%. Now, I think there are some other, and so that goes from 2.5 billion down to 500 million for Buddhism, and then there are other religions that I think are more prevalent in the United States, that I think probably some of us are interested in talking about, that I think sometimes get thrown in the category of Christian. For instance, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. They have Jesus Christ in their name, right? But I would, and I think most Christians would consider them non-Christian. Okay, their doctrine is significantly non-Christian, and we'll talk about them down the road at some point. But as I was looking at this, I think we need to talk probably about Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam first, but then let's talk about some of those other things that we might be interested in. And in fact, in the United States, excuse me, this is world numbers as well. There's about 17 million Mormons worldwide. There's about 15 million Jews worldwide. And then there's another one that you probably haven't heard of, and there's a lot of different Southeast Asian religions that are, are a little higher than this one. But there's another one called Baha'i. Has anybody ever heard of Baha'i? Bahai. It's kind of an interesting one, and we'll talk about that. But there's also, there's things like Universalist, which some would suggest they are Christian. I would say they are not. But we can talk about all of those things. And if there's a particular religion that you would like us to address, let me know, and I'll take care of. Excuse me. Felt that one coming. And by the way, do you know if you look at a bright light that'll help you? Yeah. But if there are, let me just ask this: is there a religion that I have not mentioned that you are interested in learning more about?
Was the Jehovah's?
So Jehovah's, JW's, okay.
A few neighbors that are that.
Okay, all right. So again, some would consider them Christian, but I would say they are not. Okay.
Amish and Mennonite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Anything else? And if you don't have to, this isn't a closed list here. This can be marked incomplete. Anything else? Off the top.
Scientology.
Scientology, that's a good one. Yeah. Okay. All right. So with that said, I thought what we would start with, quite frankly, because I know a little bit about Islam, but I know next to nothing about Buddhism or Hinduism. And since those are number 3 and 4 on the list, I did some research on Buddhism, and I learned a lot. And I don't know what you know about Buddhism, but we're going to learn some today. And then I think next week we'll talk about Hinduism, and then the following week we'll begin Islam, and that may take more time, because I think probably more of us have more questions, and we probably generally know more about that than other things. Okay, that a plan for everybody. If you have a different idea, please let me know. It doesn't have to be on video here, but if you hate that idea, let me know. I'm okay with that. So, first of all, with Buddhism by some is not considered a religion. Okay, because in Buddhism, and honestly, I learned this last week as I'm studying. It has about 500,000, almost 500 million followers, but they're not a theistic religion. Yeah. So Buddhism, what I mean by, so what does it mean? If we are theists, what does that mean? We believe in God, a God, okay? At least a God. Hinduism has multiple gods. But Buddhism is not a theistic religion. They do not believe in God. It's more of an atheistic religion, okay? Which is a weird thing if you think of it. But it's more of a lifestyle. It's more of a philosophy than it is necessarily a religion. And so it all began about between the 5th and 6th century BC with Buddha, and I'm going to screw up his name, Gamatra or whatever, something like some of the words that I was reading was, it was worse than the first reading today. But
are you saying I didn't do it very
no, you did a great job. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's not what I was saying. But it began in India with the Buddha, and one of the things I learned, I'm just going to stop saying that because most of this, what I'm going to tell you is what I've learned this week. But there are multiple Buddhas, but one great Buddha, the Buddha. So apparently, being a Buddha is like going up to the highest level, okay? So I understood previously that Buddhists believe in reincarnation, okay? That when you die, you come back as something else, someone else, and you are reincarnated. And nirvana is part of that. When you get to the highest, other than a position, like a Buddha is kind of a position, but when you get to the highest state, then you reach nirvana. Can anybody tell me, what do you think nirvana is?
A YouTube song?
Yeah. No. Okay. My thought was always that it was kind of like heaven, that nirvana is heaven. But interestingly enough, from what I understand, is that nirvana is actually the state of nothingness, of just being done. And in fact, the whole process of being a Buddhist is not to get to heaven, it's to move toward nothingness. That in this life we suffer. Okay, there is pain, there is suffering, and the worst things you do the more suffering you're going to have the next time around. And the more good things you do, the less suffering you're going to have the next time around. And the goal of Buddhism is to stop the suffering and get to nothingness, and to basically break that chain, break that cycle of being repeatedly reincarnated. Okay? So it's not so much that they want to get to heaven, they just want to get nowhere, which was kind of and I read through all this, I'm like, that can't be right. But that's kind of in essence what I learned.
Would that be like dead?
Dead. There are. It's called nihilism, Nihil, I think, nihilism, which is where we get our word for annihilate. So nihilism is the concept that when we're dead, we nothing happens to us. We're just gone. Okay, and so I would say that Buddhists are nihilists. They believe that when we're dead, we're that final death, then we're just done, and there's nothing beyond. And so nirvana is that state of nothingness. Okay, which is, from my perspective, life then becomes one long. If I don't do something good, I'm going to get my butt ripped the next time around, and so it's more of a fear of the punishment rather than the hope of something wonderful. And it just seems to me to be an unfortunate way to live. But the goal then is that they move from these different stages, if you will. Gautama Buddha, that I found his name finally, is the guy who started all this, and so it's older than Christianity, okay, by a few hundred years.
Can I interject?
Yeah, please.
Is this where Zen? Is this the one?
Zen Buddha,
Zen
yeah.
Here, right? So Zen would then be, when we talk about Zen, it's that when we say nothingness, I think it's just anything in our mind, right?
Sure. So anything in our mind, that nothingness, yes, that's Zen. But I think that nirvana stage is beyond that. And so the idea of that whole Zen and meditation and so forth like that is to remove the desires from your life so that you depend on nothing and you need nothing, and then liberation from. So here, let me read this. Buddha set out on a quest to find liberation from suffering, also known as nirvana, and that's the repeated reincarnation of a Buddhist. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to keep moving through this, and.
So is that the reason for the reincarnation? They didn't make it to nirvana this time?
Exactly. So you're going to keep repeating until you reach that final stage. And if you don't reach that final stage, you're just going to keep coming back, and you're just going to keep suffering. Okay? Yeah.
I'm glad I only have to do it once.
Yeah.
Fills you with comfort, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Do those that have been reincarnated remember that they've been here before?
No, not necessarily.
So how do we know we haven't been reincarnated? I know I haven't.
You haven't. Let me assure you of that. You have not. But
no, but how would somebody?
If you were a Buddhist, how would you know?
Yeah.
Theoretically, because you attain for more in this life. But no, I found nothing that said that they remember from life to life. Okay? Okay? Their doctrine, their beliefs are, they're called, like we have the Quran for Islam, or the Torah for Judaism. We have the Dharma. You guys all remember the show Dharma and Greg? I mean, that's why she was named that. Dharma is their doctrine. That's their canon of beliefs. And so that's their thoughts. There are two main schools of Buddhism, and I'm probably going to Bodhisattva and then Mahayana are the two major schools of Buddhism. And if anybody can read those better than me, you are welcome to that. There is a noble eightfold path that they go through. Let me see. Okay. I don't think this is the eightfold path. There are eightfold path. There's four noble truths, and there all kinds of stuff. But one of the things, there is apparently no written Dharma, no written documents until the very early centuries before Christ. So it's like 400 to 500 years after the Buddha lived that people started writing this down. And so there's no real eyewitness accounts, no written eyewitness accounts of Buddha himself. And so there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of suggestions about Buddha, and there's a lot of contrasting thoughts on that. Now, I should also say that there are some Buddhists who do believe in a God, who do believe in a deity or deities, but the fundamental Buddhist thinking is that it is atheistic. So this suffering is called dukkha. That they want to end the dukkha, that suffering in their lives. They have four noble truths: dukkha, which is the suffering; samadhaya, again I'm going to mess these up, which is the cause; nirodha, which is confinement; and marga, which is the path to all this. And then there's all this other, I mean, from my perspective, I'm saying this kind of seems kind of crazy stuff. But it's a based on that we keep being reborn, and the wheel of life. Okay, let me see here. Karma is a big Buddhist concept. Do you know what karma means? Or karma is? I don't know whether it
Goes around, comes around.
goes around, comes around. I always get that backwards. I don't know if it's goes around, comes around, or comes around, goes around. But yes, I forget which one's which. I think it's what goes around, comes around, right? Yeah, you said it right. Okay. So what you do comes back to benefit or punish you. So the word karma literally means work. Okay, so what you do, your actions make a difference in what happens to you. It is definitely not a Christian concept, but we do have similar passages in the Bible that do unto others as you want to as you want them to do unto you. I mean, it's kind of the same concept, but we do not believe in karma. In fact, we are very anti-karma, okay? Because what I do, I don't get back because of Jesus Christ, okay? No matter what I do, Jesus has paid for all the bad. And so I gain because Jesus lost. Okay, so it's very our Christian understanding is absolute opposite of karma. Liberation, that's nirvana, and so nirvana literally means blowing out, quenching, becoming extinguished, and that just seems unfortunate to desire. That I'm so done with life. I've got to be good so I can just be done doing this repetitious thing. Let me see, what else? Emptiness, voidness, central concept in Buddhism. Let me see. There's lots of things that I'm just going to kind of skip over, like the 3 jewels or the 5 aggregates of no self, and let me see, what else? Paths to liberation. In the early text, here's the Eightfold Noble Path. Division, wisdom. Right view. Here we go. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So when we, theoretically, from a Buddhist perspective, when you do these 8 things, you are moving up and doing better than you did before. So that's the Eightfold Path to Nirvana. Let me see here. Just throw out questions if you have.
Sad to say they can't make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
Right.
I mean, there's no forgiveness in there.
There is no forgiveness. You just, you screwed up, try again.
Come back next
Yeah.
time and see if you can't get rid
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, here are 5 precepts to basic training applicable to all Buddhists, no matter what other beliefs. These are little paragraphs, so let me just read them to you. First of all, I undertake the training precept to abstain from all onslaught on breathing beings. Okay? Do no harm. Okay? This includes ordering or causing someone else to kill, or approve of others being killed. And then number 2, I undertake the training precept to abstain from taking what is not given. Okay, so already I'm hearing, well, it sounds like the 10 Commandments. You shall not kill, you shall not steal. And this one includes fraud, cheating, forgery. I undertake the training precept to abstain from misconduct concerning sensual pleasures. Okay, no lust. I mean, what's that? You shall not commit adultery. Okay, this includes adultery, rape, incest, sex with others. Number 4, I undertake the training precept to abstain from false speech. You shall not bear false witness. Okay. And then number 5, I undertake the training precept to abstain from alcoholic drink or drugs that are an opportunity for heedlessness. I'm not sure where that one would fall in, but basically these things sound a lot like if you follow the 10 Commandments. So those are, if you were to become a Buddhist, you would have to commit to those things. So then I get to paragraphs like this, and it's a very short paragraph. It says, Vinaya, an ordination ceremony at Wat Yanawa in Bangkok. And already my brain's going blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, some of this was difficult to read, I'm just saying. Mindfulness and clear comprehension, meditation. It's called dhyana, 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 maybe dhyana. But that's that meditation, that Zen, that thoughtfulness kind of a thing. formless attainments. Let's see, where else? There are different variations. Perhaps you've heard of Brahmas. That's a different variation on Buddhism, Brahman Buddhism. And then there's like these words that are like 24 characters long. I mean, I'm not too far from Joe. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, I was 4 off. And that's a name. I kind of went through those. So there are sometimes to help with the meditation, there's visualization techniques using mandalas or symbols, images, and so they kind of meditate on those kinds of things.
Sorry, I want to interject.
Yeah, please.
So some of that has become kind of normed in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where, okay, you need to visualize something, or you need to meditate. So
We get our Zen moment on 9 and 10.
Yeah, yeah, but I think we need to be careful that, because I don't know that meditation in and of itself is a bad thing. We would call it praying, okay, and recognizing and having that time alone, or an attempt to spend some time alone with God. I don't know that the concept of meditation or visualization is necessarily a bad thing, but I think those things can creep into our culture and become normalized, and then other belief systems can sneak in, and we say, oh, well, that's Buddhism. I believe in visualization. I believe in meditation. That must mean I'm a Buddhist, right? And so I think that can happen, and so we need to be clear of that, careful of that, I should say. Devotion is not where we read devotion or that we spend some time being devoted to God. It's just devotion to the Dharma, to the doctrine, to the philosophy, to the teaching. So here, let me read this. Unlike what the Bible is to Christianity and the Quran to Islam, but like all major ancient Indian religion, there is no consensus among the different Buddhist tradition as to what constitutes the scriptures or a common canon in Buddhism. That's what I was talking about. There was 400 to 500 years after the Buddha lived, they were starting to write some of these things down, and then they went all kind of cattywampus all over the place. There are all kinds of texts. Let me see. I'm obviously just trying to spin through some of these. Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, Nirvana, Three Marks of Existence, Five Aggregates, Dependent Origination, Karma, and Rebirth are all, whatever else is different, those are in all forms of Buddhism. But basically, again, the original Buddhists would argue that there is no God. They are atheistic. And again, let's talk about, and it just popped into my head, let's talk for a moment just about this nihilism that we talked about. Some Christians believe in nihilism, okay? And non-Christians, atheists, I mean, they believe that when we die, we just stop being. Christians, technically, and so I say technically because I think there are a lot of Christians who would argue this, not all Christians, I think, believe in hell, okay? There are some so-called Christians who don't believe hell exists, that when we die, if you don't go to heaven, you just stop existing, okay? The Bible's very clear that it's a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth, okay? Hell is something we want to avoid, and we don't avoid that by getting better each lifetime. We avoid that by trusting in Jesus, because he's the one who died for us. So some Christians will confuse hell with nihilism. We don't just simply stop existing. It is a place. It is a essence of being, if you will.
What do Buddhists think happens to non-Buddhists when they physically die? So if we had a Buddhist sitting here and I'm a non-Buddhist.
And you both die.
Well, what do they think of what's good? If I say I'm a professing Christian, what do they think happens to me when this earthly shell dies?
Next time you're going to come back as a cow or something. I don't know.
Oh, but I still
Keep
come back
coming
as
back.
something to something.
You still come back until you figure it out.
Oh, so eventually you either gonna start believing or
Or
well,
you,
we know where it ends because
Right.
there's nobody.
right,
Just
exactly.
like they're gonna find out, but they're not coming back either.
Yes, they're going to find it out.
So
Yeah, at the end of this life, not at the end of another life.
right, all right.
Yeah. So yeah, you just keep coming back till you figure it out.
And if you come back as a doorknob, you're pretty much done.
Yeah, I don't think you can come back as a doorknob, but that is an interesting thought. I think you have to come back as a what did the first words I read are not first words to any living being or something. You have to come back as something living. So one of the guidelines is to do no harm to another living being. So don't step on an ant. It could be your grandmother or your aunt. I didn't mean that. It just came to me. So yeah.
Well, who recognizes that? If let's say, just to say I die and I didn't get anything right in this life and I do come back as an ant, who's going to tell me that, well, that's Liz over
Yeah,
there crawling around? You see, that's what
Yeah.
I don't get.
And I don't know
It's
how
not
you
that-
you die as an ant, you come back as a spider. I don't know. Assuming a spider is better than an ant. I'm just saying. But I don't know how that works in their doctrine.
There's a lot of open area there to
Yeah, and there were some times they did say that as science has gained in our culture, Buddhists, like Buddhism, like other religions, quite frankly, has dropped. Okay, but I think what I kind of got the hint was that they've had a decrease in Buddhism worldwide more than other religions, just because it seems, from a scientific perspective, more fanciful, and so they've had a significant downturn in the last 100 years or so. Kind of began in India. Sri Lanka is part of that whole thing. Here's where all that. It's not very popular here in our country, but there is a growing. It actually is growing in I wouldn't say popularity, but it's. But like Matt was saying before, some of those things kind of sneak into our culture, and we don't even recognize it. So there are new, they call them neo-Buddhism movements that just kind of twist. I shouldn't say twist. They change things to make them more compatible with the way modern culture sees things. I did not realize this either, but similar to the Roman Catholic Church and as well as many religions, Christian denominations even, there have been a number of sexual abuse and misconduct scandals among the Buddhists. That as their disciples went to monasteries and so forth, that there has been some of that has happened. So some people, and this is Western scholars of religion who defined religion based solely on a theistic conception would not consider Buddhism actually a religion, but more a philosophy.
Would it be appropriate to just say it's concerned about self, about improving, following,
Yeah,
whatever the statute?
in a sense, it's concerned about self, but only, but concern, and that's actually was an argument against some of the stuff that the newer Buddhism say. Well, you're just wondering about yourself. That's all you care about. So that's some of the neo-Buddhism stuff that says we're not only concerned about ourselves. We're concerned about those around us. The neo-Buddhist would say, or the original Buddhist would say, I care about others because I care about myself, and if I care about others, then myself gains in that. Okay. So let me just wrap this up. Currently about 488 million, but as many as 535 in the 2010s worldwide. So that it has dropped to some degree, and in India, more than 85% of the total Buddhists have converted from Hinduism to Buddhism. In New Zealand, about 25 to 35% of the Buddhists are converts to Buddhism. So apparently New Zealand, for whatever reason, has an increasing number of Buddhists. And there's a Buddhist monastery in Finland. Okay. I can be done with Buddhism, I'm just saying, in many respects. But it was really interesting, and I'm glad I took the time. But any other questions before we?
Can you add, will you add voodoo to your list?
Voodoo? Okay. And that was actually listed in one of the lists. I remember seeing that in one of the lists of religions, that voodoo was one of those religions as a world religion. It's pretty small, but yeah. Okay. All right. Closing thoughts, comments? Okay. If anybody watching online has suggestions of where we go with different religions, let me know too. And if you guys hate this, again, we can do something else. Okay, was this interesting, you guys?
Very.
Okay, I certainly learned. So, okay, well, let's wrap up with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being God, a God that we know, a God that we can trust, a God that is and loves and that saves us. And we thank you for our one life here and a life that will continue because of Jesus, because of our faith and because of your grace. Lord, we ask that you would be with those who do not believe in you, and as we continue in the weeks ahead, we ask that you would maybe move in us as we come across people like this in our lives, that we can talk to them about you, the true God, and Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and your love and your salvation for us. Guide us as we go. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all.